We're starting out with our first guest is Ila Abramson, who who needs no introduction, but I'm going to give one to her. Owner recruiter of iSpy Recruiting. She's an independent recruiter for Animation and VFX, who started as a PA, right? Yeah. On Nightmare Before Christmas. Have you heard about that film? Yeah. She's worked for ABC, recruited for PDI Dreamworks, MTV, Nickelodeon, in New York and LA, and her company provides customized recruiting for a number of clients. Ila is going to give a presentation, and then she will be interviewed by our own Kaya also. So welcome, Ila.
And thanks for having me. My name is Ila, and my company is iSpy Recruiting, and I staff both freelance and full-time animation and design jobs, VFX, anything that's basically not live action, I cover it. Today I'm going to talk to you about the business of being an artist. I'm going to go into like the nuts and bolts of what goes into your portfolio package and how to present yourself. But I think really what I also want to emphasize and talk about is how, you know, no matter where you are, if you're staff, freelance, as you go venture into this industry, you are your own business, and to always remember that. So kind of setting up good habits now, and your professional self, and always keeping that in mind, so that when you are in the industry, it's kind of second nature and things to just consider and think about. So I staff freelance and full-time, and there's no fee in working with me, so I'm just another resource to let you know about opportunities. I don't do exclusives with talent or anything like that. I'm hired by the studios. So in terms of working with me, it really just comes down to timing and if I have something appropriate. So sometimes people contact me and like out of the gate, like, oh, we've got something, or 6 months or a year down the line. So once you're in my system, I always keep you posted on opportunities. So there you go. Sorry, I keep doing this. And I look at every single piece of material that comes my way. I'm a real person. I'm a boutique shop. So I want you to know that, you know, there's not, you know, I care about your work. I care about you. I'm looking at your materials. Sometimes it does take a little time for me to reply, but I do reply to every single person that does apply to me as well. So, you know, you have a real person and not a robot on the other end. And like I said, once you apply, you're always under active consideration. So sometimes we won't speak for a while, but you know, a year down the line, I might contact you for an appropriate opportunity. So once you're in the system, you're kind of always in the system. But as I talk about today, with myself or with any other studio that you're interested in, it's your job as a business to stay in touch with people, right? Don't just apply once and disappear and then just be passive. A lot of this goes down to you being visible and being active and communicating. And a little bit more about my background before I launch into that. I'm also adjunct faculty at School of Visual Arts and at Brooklyn College Fierstein School of Cinema Arts. And that's me. So I'll tell you a little bit about my background and where I started and kind of my journey, and sort of keeping yourself open to the fact that your journey's already begun and it's going to continue. So kind of keeping yourself open to the twists and turns that are definitely going to happen. So you're just launching. So I started, I'm going to date myself, and that's just what it is. So I studied film, and you know, I moved out to San Francisco, and I started as a PA working in the film industry, and very quickly realized that I was pretty disenchanted, and it didn't really mirror my cozy school experience, which I've got to say, DePaul, I'm so impressed. All of you are already like hustling, make it happen. And it looks like the program really sets you up for the real world ahead of time. So kudos to you. It's awesome. So I started my career and all of a sudden I was like, oh, this is not what I want to do. I wasn't vibing on the culture. It just didn't feel like the right fit for me. And, I was working in the industry before the World Wide Web and the internets and social media and all those things, which I know now it's hard for you to envision, but we made it through somehow. But the hustle was real. The networking was real. The getting your work out to people. You literally had to send your reel in, send your resume through the mail, and you had to make calls and talk to people and really network and figure out who's connected to who. You literally, in order to find out any information about the industry, you had to buy the trades and like read the trades and try and figure out how you could get access to any of these people. So the information is out there for the taking for you now. So a lot of your homework is already done. So I really want to emphasize that the opportunities are going to go to the people that can connect the dots and get closer to the job because, the contacts are out there, the social media is out there, the work is out there. You can find those opportunities without even leaving your desk. So I think that's really important to recognize and being proactive about that. I had to restart and I had to look and make calls and figure things out through a friend of a friend of a friend that somehow used to date my brother, blah, blah, blah. Totally random. I had an opportunity to interview for an internship on a stop motion film. And I had no connection to stop motion. I hadn't done animation, but I was very fortunate. I went in for the interview and I got the internship. And again, I had already graduated. So I was, but saying yes to a new opportunity and foot in the door opportunities is really important. So as much as you'd love to maybe graduate and get that animation director gig out of the gate, they're stepping stones. And, foot in the door, if you're a PA or a receptionist, an intern, an apprentice, those are going to lead to the opportunities that you want because you're already starting to make an impression. You're getting to know the teams. And as soon as that job opens up, they already know you and they already have a sense of like, oh yeah, we want to work with you because in addition to doing good work, we're hiring you for all of these other skills. Do you communicate? Do you show up on time? If you run into a problem, do you let us know before the delivery? All these things are the reasons why we hire you in addition to your work. So those soft skills and being able to present yourself and work with the team, no matter what, even if you're always going to be working with other people. So even if you're doing your own independent films, to some degree, you're going to be, working with, festival people. So you're making an impact as a person too. So I got my internship and all of a sudden, as soon as I got on that set, I was like, oh yeah, this is what I want to do. These are the people I want to be with. It was on Nightmare Before Christmas. So at the time, none of us knew what that was going to be. Nightmare was, a bunch of Gumby folks, people that animated the Pillsbury Doughboy. We were just kind of all tinkering together and it was incredible. But as an intern, I had to do film runs. I had to fetch Henry Selick's muffin every day. He liked the lemon poppy seed muffin exactly on his desk at 8:00, all the things. But, I did all of that and then some. So, I showed that I was an important part of that community, an important part of the production. And when there wasn't something to do, I found something to do. So I really made myself indisposable so that when the time came and a job actually opened up, nobody wants to post a job because you get inundated with resumes. It all starts with your network. So with any job, you start with your crew and you say, hey, you start with your crew, you say, does anybody know anybody? Or you start with your interns. You start with those people that have already proven themselves to you. And you say, oh yeah, we already know them. It's a known quantity. We can just hit the ground running. So that's, for me, I got my first job as a PA working on Nightmare. So I was like, boop, boop. And it was great. So from there, this is me at the premiere of Nightmare. Any of you stop motion people remember Rich Zimmerman? This is Rich. He was a Pillsbury Doughboy guy, but he's still a stop motion animator to this day. But so went to the premiere and it was awesome and it was like glamorous and we were like, oh, so excited. And then the next day I woke up and I was like, okay, oh, I don't have a job because the premiere happened and that's what happens. So this industry now more than ever is not about the gold watch at the end. It's really project to project. Things get shelved, things premiere, and then the next day you're back on, you're back out there looking for work. So, that was a moment of like, oh, okay, I got to keep the hustle going. At that point, I had a slightly bigger network, right? All of a sudden I knew the whole stop motion crew and people were moving around and talking about different projects. And from this job, I was fortunate to move on to another stop motion show called Bump in the Night. Does anybody remember about the night? It was creepy, but it was a fun show. So a lot of the Nightmare people actually ended up going to Bump in the Night. And, it was a Saturday morning kids show. And all of a sudden I was okay. I was a production coordinator and I was hustling. I was doing my thing and everything was going well. And when I got to Bump in the Night, there was actually the executive producer there, sort of became very naturally my mentor. I mean, she became this person that I was like, oh, this is kind of the career path I think I'm on. Like, I think I'm going to eventually be an EP. And she was just an amazing sounding board for me. And, I didn't dominate her time, but every now and then I'd take her out for a drink or coffee and just hear her stories and talk to her and ask questions. So as you move through your career, seeking out mentors or seeking out those people that might have that career path that you're interested in is such a valuable relationship. And it's not something that's guaranteed. It's something that you foster. It's something that you facilitate. And you're really to be respectful of that relationship. To this day, Rose and I are tight. I mean, we stay in touch. So she really became my sounding board. So one day we were at Bump in the Night, everything's going well, and they called a company-wide meeting. So we all went to the backstage for the company-wide meeting, and there were people there in suits, and we're like, what are people in suits doing here? Like, you never see people in suits. So all of a sudden it felt a little fishy. And they said, well, ABC has bought Disney has bought ABC, and we're replacing all of the Saturday morning programming with Disney shows. So, show's over, it's canceled, get your stuff and leave. And we're like, wait, what? And they're like, it's over. There are guards at the door, get your stuff and leave. And you're like, so literally everything that was important that morning, everything that was urgent was literally trash to them. So that was a reality check that also, okay, premieres happen, but also layoffs happen. And that's just part of our industry. If you want stability, if you want the day in, the day out, the never changing, then you should become accountants or the mortuary business. Those are the only two constants. But otherwise, that was definitely a reality check. So some of those people, some of those original nightmare people, hardcore stop motion, they said, there's this other studio that's in the East Bay that's starting up, and they're like offering to train people on computers. And I was like, computers? That's never gonna last. But they're like, well, it's another tool to add to my tool belt. I'm still an animator first and foremost. So some of those people were like, I'm gonna say yes to this opportunity. And they went over to what was Pixar at the time. So some of those original animators are all, stop motion people. Some of the other animators said, you know what? Layoffs have happened, and I've had a story brewing in my head. I have a vision. I have something that I want to create. And all of a sudden, I've got all these people that are available to help me. And there were at least 4 people from that production that did their own shorts, and some of them went on to be Academy-nominated shorts. So, when slow times happen, this is when you make the most of it. Learn a new tool, learn a new skill set. You're artists first and foremost, create, make something. Because, yes, your day job is creating for somebody else, but you all have a voice and you all have a vision, so make it happen. So that was the downtime. For me, I had saved for a rainy day, and I was like, I just need a little R&R, and I need to take care of myself, because that's also really important. If anything we've learned from the years of the pandemic especially is you got to take care of yourself. So I always say work smarter, not harder. Figure out you've got to take care of your whole being, your mental being. You need to be rested. You need to be fresh to think clearly. So I took a little time off and I went traveling. And then one of the first people I met with in my network was my mentor. And we went out for coffee, and she was kind of giving me some names and some people to potentially contact. Actually, from her, one of the names was this person who worked in recruiting at this studio that was opening up in the South Bay. And I called her up and I was like, oh, I'm a production coordinator. I'm really interested. I got your name through Rose, blah, blah, blah. And she said, she's like, we're so far out from production. She's like, we're just in the hiring and recruiting phase, and I'm just trying to find talent. So, we can talk in maybe 6 months to a year. And, I don't know what it was for me to say, well, do you need help in recruiting, or can I help with that? I mean, just something happened for me to keep myself open and open to the pivot and to say yes, where I said, well, I know a lot of people, I know all these animators, can I help? And she's like, would you be interested in recruiting? I was like, sure, yes, why not? So I went in for an interview and I got hired as a recruiter. I didn't know what I was doing, but there were 3 of us, my boss and 2 recruiters, and it was Shrek and it was PDI Dreamworks, just as they were, starting. I lost my slides. Just as they were, PDI had been a small little shop. Dreamworks had just merged with PDI, and they were in the building phase. So when I started, we were 25 people, and when I left, we were, easily over 500. So it was fast and furious, but I learned a ton. That was my introduction into CG. So I came from the stop motion world. All of a sudden, for me, I was adding another tool and understanding the world of CG, starting to meet all the talent and starting to learn recruiting. And all of a sudden, I was like, again, okay, animation and recruiting. Yeah, this is it. So keeping yourself open, you never know. And the pivots are very real, and to recognize those pivots and to take advantage of those opportunities. We were talking yesterday about, if an opportunity presents itself and you're a little scared of it, it's probably a good reason to take it. So we don't expect you to be experts. We don't expect you to know everything. You know, as far as I'm concerned, you're a perpetual student in this world and in your industry. So you're going to graduate and just, there's going to be bumps, but you know, that's part of it. So, so anyways, I was the recruiter on Ants, Shrek, and their commercial division at the time. You know, it was amazing, and I was super happy there. And I didn't ever think I would leave, but I fell in love. So keep yourself open to love, because that also can work out sometimes. And it did, which is great. But my boyfriend at the time, blah, 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 wanted to move to the East Coast. I was sort of like, all right. So a little therapy, a little communication. We moved to the East Coast. It was all good. And through my network and talking to people, I ended up at MTV Animation. So this is, I actually don't know if this actually was, this is a piece of production art that I have. I don't know if this was actually ever an episode or not, but I love it. So you're getting to see a piece of my artwork. So I got to MTV Animation, and then at that point, okay, like I know the world of stop motion, I know the world of CG, and all of a sudden 2D was becoming part of my world, okay? Learning, exposing myself to something new. New York, it was a whole different scene. All of a sudden I was also doing like series work, which I hadn't really done before. Well, bump in the night a little bit, I guess. But anyways, so yeah, MTV was awesome. So that was during the time of Daria, Celebrity Deathmatch, and Beavis and Butthead had recently come out with their feature. So everybody's seen that, right? It's awesome. So, and a lot of the people at MTV Animation were, you know, that was the thing. That was the scene. And a lot of people came out of school, went straight to MTV Animation, and were rocking and rolling there. So one day, they had a company-wide meeting, and I was like, And we had the company-wide meeting, and there were people in suits there, and I was like, And, you know, they said, well, we've decided to replace the animation block with music videos, so shows are canceled. All of the work has been shipped off to Ozone Park for storage, so thanks for your time. And we were like, wait, what? They're like, all of the work has been shipped to Ozone Park for storage, and thanks for your time. So there you go. You know, we never thought that was gonna happen. I maybe thought with the suits, but so reality check. You know, that was like incredible talent at MTV, and part of my job in recruiting was like, okay, I'm gonna help offboard some of these people, and you know, meet with them and talk them through their work, et cetera, help them put stuff together. And I was meeting with animation directors, art directors, storyboard artists, all these incredible people that, again, to date myself, the work then was still on paper. Like it was still like physical work. It wasn't really digital. I don't think people really even had like websites up and running for their portfolios. So I was meeting with incredible artists, and I said, okay, let's see what you've got. And they were like, I didn't save it. I never thought it was going to end. I mean, I didn't save anything. And, you know, all my work's shipped off and stored in Ozone Park. And you're like, what? So again, you are your own business. No matter where you are, invest in the job that you're in, but always remember, keep your work more or less up to date. You never know. You could get a call from a recruiter. You could have that dream job all of a sudden pop up. And now more than ever, the industry moves so fast, and we can staff stuff in 24 hours if we need to. So you want to be that person that says like, yeah, I have all my shots. Let me just dust it off. I'll get that to you tomorrow. Versus the person that's like, ooh, okay, let me let me collect my work, let me figure it out. I mean, people move from studio to studio. Once the job is done, it's really hard to collect your work. So be mindful of that. Every 6 months, take a look. Does it actively reflect who you are? And it doesn't have to be perfectly polished, but keep that stuff, keep it in your back pocket, because you never know when you're gonna have to update your work. So that was definitely a lesson in kind of making sure you keep your stuff, I can't even remember what I ate for dinner like 2 nights ago, so I can't even remember what projects I worked on, a year ago. So definitely collect your work, and also be mindful, obviously, if any work is NDA, non-disclosure agreements, don't post it unless you know that it's okay to post it, or else you have to password protect it, but we can talk about that later. All right, so after that, for me, I moved over to Nickelodeon, and I was at Nick Digital Studios, and I was in charge of recruiting for the East and West Coast. We were doing a lot of the interstitial work. Motion design started to kind of be part of my world as well. Jimmy Neutron was part of the Nickelodeon fabric then. And it was going great. The industry at that point was changing a little bit. It wasn't just about proprietary software anymore. There was a lot more tools available that was just like off-the-shelf software, Maya. You could do a lot more with smaller teams. So a lot of smaller mom and pop shops were opening up at that time. Actually, a lot of some of the Nick Digital people started Psyop. Does anybody know Psyop and their work? Yeah, awesome. So that was an original Nick Digital team that broke off and started their own thing. Also around the time, like Blue Sky had just done Ice Age, and, they didn't have something lined up right after Ice Age. They had to work on Ice Age too. So there was layoffs happening. Oh, nice, thanks. There were layoffs happening, and, I was thinking this is going to be another company-wide meeting at some point. Part of what I did I enjoy people, I enjoy networking, I enjoy talking to people. So I was always fielding calls from other studios. Hey, do you know any stop motion people? And I was always hooking people up. And I thought, rather than wait for the next suit, I'm gonna think about launching my own thing. So from Nick Digital, I started I Spy Recruiting. So we're going on 22 years strong. So that's great. And even to this day, I continue to evolve, change, explore, take new skills under my belt and new talent under my belt as we start to do more experiential, obviously gaming, AR, VR, again, the industry moves and evolves and it changes at a pretty rapid rate now. So I also am continuing to be a perpetual student. So that's me so far. We want to talk about you. So enough about me. What I, you have, your work has to speak for you before you're able to talk me through it, before you're able to show me how fabulous you are. So really recognizing that, it's out there. Actually, by the time I contact you for a job, I've already spent time on all of your materials. I've already kind of sussed it out. So, your business is out there and people are spending time on it. So remember to be easy to find. Sorry, I need to pull up my notes. Be easy to find. I literally will look at credits and I'll just use the Google machine. So think about has everybody Googled themselves? Do you know what shows up? Think about that. So starting now, building your professional brand and starting to have the professional stuff out there. You can have your other stuff out there, but now's the time to kind of separate the two because it's only gonna stay separate, right? As much as I like to connect with people on socials, LinkedIn is the professional one. if you start an Instagram, you have a professional Instagram and then your party Instagram, but never the two shall meet. It should be really easy to understand your skill set. You have seconds to make an impression, I'm sorry to say, but in the old days at PDI Dreamworks, I'd literally be in a room surrounded by VHS tapes, and it was like burp, 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 like, wow. And all of a sudden, if it doesn't grab us, we move on. So, and I'll go into your portfolio a little bit more, but you really need to know that it's clear, and it's really clear as to what your skill set is and what you're going for. Easy to find you. You'd be surprised how sometimes I'm on somebody's website and I'm like, I don't have any contact information. I can't find you. And at some point, I'll give up. So really easy to find you on all of this, on all of the materials. And then really easy to update your materials. So again, that goes back to, hopefully you're going to get a lot of jobs under your belt, and, it shouldn't be too daunting to kind of, update your reel, update your website, and get those materials out there. And to customize, not one size doesn't fit all. So when you apply to a smaller shop, they're going to want to see a different skill set than if you apply to a much larger facility. So that's what you also need to keep in mind. And 360, like literally everything connects to each other. So if I happen to stumble upon you on LinkedIn, I can get to your website. From your website, I can get to your Instagram to see your work in progress. From Instagram, I can get back to your website. I can download your resume. All the things work together. So when you update one, you update everything. And these are just like habits, like just set up good habits so that, for me, every 6 months, I go back and I look at my work and I update my client list. And these are the things that you hopefully it becomes rote. So before you apply, just like you would do for looking for those jobs, really do your research and think about it. The jobs, you can just apply, you could send it in to everybody and just be passive, but the jobs are going to go to the people that really know who they're applying to. Do they have an inside connection? If they don't have an inside connection, do they have, does an alumni know somebody? That always helps. How you potentially fit in. I sometimes get pretty character heavy resumes for like a VFX studio, that's mostly live action compositing, and you're like, but they didn't do their homework. So really do the homework on your end so that when you submit for the job, you're that much closer to the end result versus us having to put all the pieces together or maybe back burnering it. So again, one size doesn't fit all. If you apply to a small shop, think about that. They're going to want to have you wear a couple different hats. So maybe you're an animator and a rigger. Maybe you're an animator, rigger, modeler. Or if you go to a much bigger shop, they're going to want to see you do one thing really, really, really well. So you're going to have different versions of yourself that you sell, and you can customize the reel on your website. I recommend maybe having 2 different reels, one that's a generalist and one that's specific. And that's if those are your strengths. Not all of you are going to have a generalist skill set. You might just want to do one thing really, really well. So then, that's the track that you're on. Read the job description if there is one, and go through it. The job description is a wish list, but be able to really think okay, do my materials support what they're looking for? Does my resume reflect what they're looking for? Where do I fall short? And how can I maybe bridge that gap? And apply ×2. So apply through the usual recruiting channels, but then again, try and find an inside connection. A lot of studios will offer, money to somebody on the inside if they end up staffing a job. So, people are motivated to help make that happen. And again, you are your network now. You're already continuing this. It's going to grow, but right now you're already making an impression with each other. And, be your best professional self, because that's ultimately what you're doing now. And again, make it easy for your viewer to understand your work, because as soon as, like, if I try and play a reel and it's a huge download and I'm like, oh, okay, I got up staff, that I moved on, and then you've lost my attention. So really avoid any like back burner pitfalls. If your work is password protected and says, contact me for the password, I'm going to do that maybe after I've staffed the job. So make it easy for us to connect the dots, figure out what you do, what your skill set is, how you fit in, and how we can find you, okay? That's on you. Don't make us jump through all these hoops, because then you're going to lose your viewer. And stay in touch and don't disappear. Like, you might not get into a studio right away, and recognize that it just really comes down to timing. So don't get discouraged. Stay in touch. Every 6 months when you update your work, that is the perfect opportunity to send it back into everybody. And guess what? You go back to the top of the list. You're back at the front of the line. So that's another motivator for you to kind of stay up to date with your work. It's also a great way for you to blast it on social media. Hey, everybody, I just updated my reel. Here's my latest and greatest. It doesn't even have to be professional work. It can be like, oh, I've been tinkering with Houdini. Here are some new pieces that I've been working on. That's fine. It doesn't have to be perfectly polished, but get it out there. Be visible, be easy to find. And let's see. So all the components that go into your package, LinkedIn. I already have gotten some LinkedIn invites from some of you, so thank you. It's awesome. LinkedIn, resume, cover letter, Instagram, website, reel. And again, they all work together. When you update one, you update all, okay? So I'll run through each piece. I just want to say that Instagram, which I don't have a slide for, is basically, that's your work in progress. That's when you're working on tests. That can be sort of like, I've been doing some sketches, I've been doing some paintings, but oh no. Anyways, so I'm going to run through these, and somehow I'm running out of time. What I want to emphasize, two things. You have career services available to you. Career services is such an incredible resource. So tap into your career services department, because this is their job to help you work out the kinks on all of these materials. And with all of your materials, I always say, like, the grandma test is really important. If your grandma can understand what you do, and if your grandma can get on your website and navigate it, perfect. Simple, clean, easy to navigate all of your materials, okay? Put all of that creativity into the work itself, and everything else can be really stripped down and easy for me to figure it out and how to, contact you, basically. So LinkedIn, use a professional photo. If you do have a nice image that you enjoy, like an icon, feel free to use that. Customize the URL. Have a clear summary section. Tell me. Again, your work needs to speak for you. If there's a mystery, if I'm not sure, I don't know. I'm not sure. Maybe I'll contact you, but be clear. Contact info, you can embed your resume in there. You can also have your website available. I can't tell you how frustrating it is to try and look at somebody's work, and I can't. I want to go to your website. I want to look at all your work. I want to spend time on it before I connect with you, okay? So that's how it's going to go. Follow. That's what it's there for. It's an amazing social tool. So follow all the places you're interested in. Follow all the people that inspire you. Connect. It's okay. We work in an industry where I'd say like 90% of the people are excellent and really kind. So people are good. And if you connect with them, make an effort to send a quick note, compliment them on their work, understand who they are. And it's short and sweet, but build that connection, okay? Post your work. Don't be shy. Be comfortable getting your work out there. And remember to update it. Keep it professional. And then I always say yes to the green. For me, especially when I'm staffing like freelance jobs and it's fast and furious, I'd like to know if people are available. So that's what it's there for. So don't be shy. Your resume, again, mirrors your LinkedIn, but that's the roadmap. And I read the resumes. I really do. So like I start at the top. You got to set me up for what I'm looking for, what I'm going to pick, what I'm going to pull out from your work, and go from there. So if I can open it up as a PDF, if it's also available on your website, again, make it easy. If it's a weird Illustrator file that I have to open and I can't open your resume, you've lost me. Simple, clean, one page. I mean, again, you're coming out of school, so hopefully you can condense it to one page. And I really want to just understand what you know, what you've done, and what you want to do, okay? In terms of design, keep it simple, keep it clean, because a lot of bigger recruiting firms and studios will use an application tracking system, ATS, and that stuff will just get scanned. So you don't want to sacrifice any materials being lost in that scan. So spell out the tools. Don't just use the icon, spell it out. Make sure that, test it out. Make sure that it's searchable, all the things. Do a little Google search on your resume. Customize depending on the job. So again, if you know you're going for a specialist job, one that's really targeted, you're going to build a different resume than one that's a little bit more of a generalist skill set. Include your contact information, your website, location. You don't have to put your specific address in, but it is helpful for me to understand where you are. Sometimes jobs are remote, sometimes we want you in-house, but it's helpful. Be honest about your skill set. Again, we don't expect you to be perfect in everything. And you can list your tools and say like expert, novice, that's fine. Because sometimes on a freelance job or a staff job, if you've tinkered in Final Cut a little bit, we might be able to put you on something just to keep you employed. So put your skill set on there, and then any additional information as it applies kind of to the industry, clubs, hobbies, memberships, volunteer opportunities. I'm going to quickly show you here's an example of a resume. So it's really simple. It's really clean. He uses like a cute little icon that is kind of mirrored throughout all of his materials. It goes back to one of his projects. So I can be like, oh yeah, I remember that piece. It has his name specifically before I even start, character animator. Great. I know how I'm going to read your resume. And that can be a summary too. People get they're like, I shouldn't include an objective. Like, tell me. Like, you're not there to walk me through your work. So it has to be super clear. Phone number, contact information, website. You can also maybe include your LinkedIn. Education. Experience, your most recent first, and you work backwards from there. Notice that he was a marketing intern, so that relates, at least it's within the creative industry. He had a graphic design job for the Porch College Ministry. So I definitely don't include religious affiliations, don't include any sensitive material. You never know who your reader is. But in this case, he was able to apply it because he was a graphic designer. So, that was a great way for him to represent his skills. And then, working on some other people's projects at school. So he was able to really flesh out his resume without a ton of experience. And then highlighted some projects. And then again, under the skills section, I really like proficient in, lists the tools, familiar with, lists the tools, and exposure. Great. These are all things I want to know. And I don't expect you to be perfect in everything. Nobody is. But it gives me a good sense of their skill set, and I do note that in my database. And then awards and capstone projects. And simple, clean, really easy to read, really easy to understand, has a nice clean layout, and it's going to scan nicely if it was an ATS system. Cover letter. I do read cover letters. Like if they ask for a cover letter, include a cover letter. The cover letter is also really just kind of like your email introduction. It doesn't have to be a huge essay, but that's like that's your flair. That's like your little like, oh, and about me. This is something like, I want to know who you are. Tell me something. You all have a story. You all have something unique about you. And I want to know. I do. I like to know this. So be yourself. It's okay. It doesn't have to be overly formal. It can have a casual tone. The cover letter is also kind of similar to like the bio section on your website, which I also read. So I spend time on the bio section. I read a cover letter. I read your email introduction, any of those pieces. Do your homework on the company. Don't just say to whom it may concern, blah, blah, blah. I mean, you know, it's like dating 101. Like, show that you know a little bit about me. And all of a sudden we're like, oh, yeah, great. So take time. Take time. Do you understand the company, the work that they do, and how you potentially fit in? And better yet, do you have an inside connection? You know, you have adjunct faculty, you have people that work in the industry, you have peers, you have alumni. Try and dig a little bit deeper and try and find an inside connection. And also, you know, you can submit both ways. You send your work into the hiring lead and then to your potential connection. Make sure you check the spelling and grammar. I have 3 letters in my name, and people mess my name up all the time. And immediately before I even look at your work, I'm like, bah. And, you know, I've already formed an impression. So before we even get to your work, you're showing me who you are, your attention to detail, your eagerness, your interest in the job. Do you know what we're about? These are all parts of what go into making you a good hire. And that's the stuff we also pay attention to. Especially if you're going to be in the area, if we can meet you in person, that's great. Or if you're going to be at a conference, if you're going to be at SIGGRAPH, a lot of studios will meet with people at SIGGRAPH. Do not mass email. Immediately, when I get an email that's to me and every other recruiter, EP, even just in the 2, like, you know, and I'm like, wait, well, first of all, I have everybody's email. Second of all, you took no time to customize, and immediately, like, you're not going to go out, you're not going to do your best. You're really going to look for those shortcuts, and maybe you're not somebody we want to work with. So impression. So take the time, do your homework on your end to get that much closer. And again, I'm trying to keep up with time, so apologies. Your reel, and include a credit list. So a reel does not really need to be more than a minute, maybe a minute and a half. But, you know, we, again, are looking at a lot of material, and we're looking at a lot of material quickly. So what I want to see is your best work and your best work only. And it can be 4 amazing pieces. I told a story of, there was one guy from DreamWorks a long time ago that sent his work in, and he was like, I want to be a character animator. And the reel was totally stripped down. It was just a character. He had a quadruped. He did a very simple, he did a couple different walk cycles. One time he had a big floppy hat. He did a brief lip sync, like an emotional piece where the person threw their computer across the room and had a breakdown. And that was maybe about it, but like within that, we were like, oh yeah, they can totally animate. And that was it. So they didn't get bogged down with the backgrounds, the environments, the lighting, nothing else. And at the end of the day, he had an offer from ILM, Pixar, DreamWorks. Like, we were all, I mean, that was the time too, there was like character animators were like, ah. But, you know, again, totally direct. It wasn't a really long reel, but what we saw, really, we understood. So we look at a lot of work. We can understand from just a couple pieces what your strength is and what you can do. Include credits. You can burn that into the reel itself. That way you never really lose the viewer, but tell me exactly what you did on that piece, what your contributions were, and the tools that you used, okay? That's really helpful because that's what we wanna, those are the questions. And you can show and tell, show me your process. We wanna see how the sausage is made. We want to see the back end. We want to see the wireframe of the model. We want to see the concept design. We want to see with where you started, where you were going, and where you ended up. So process is really helpful, because if we just look at a perfect shiny piece, we can't always tell like the back end. So show us the before and after, rotations, different passes for composites, things like that. Or you can show like the concept design in the corner while you're showing the model and the end piece. There's no formula, there's no exact way to do it, but just make sure that it's simple and clear and that grandma can understand what you've done. And again, customize and update, think about where you're sending your reel into, and really, if you have additional clips that you want to send that really support what they're looking for, it's going to help. And then also be able to talk through your reel, because hopefully we're totally impressed with everything you've sent in so far. We're impressed with your follow through, your research, that you understand who we are. We are maybe going to bring you in for an interview. Be able to talk through your work. Be able to say, like, it's called the STAR method: situation, task, action, result. Tell me there's every piece that you've created has a story. What was your approach? Why did you do it this way? What issues did you run into? How did you solve it? Because we're hiring you for your talent, but we're hiring for you for how you think and how you problem solve, right? I mean, we're going to be trying to tinker and figure out how to get this feature together. That's what we're hiring. So yes, you can make pretty pictures, but how do you approach it, right? So be able to talk through your reel and have a story behind those pieces. It's really helpful. And do not password protect. Or if you do password protect, include the password. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but if you've lost us and we can't get to your work, then again, it gets backburnered and we will contact you after we've probably staffed the project. So, and your website. Again, 360, everything works together. I want to be able to get from your website to your LinkedIn, to your Instagram. I want to get back from LinkedIn back to your website. I want to be able to look at your resume. I want to be able to look at your reel. It doesn't have to be, it can be simple, clean, really stripped down. I just want to be able to get to your work and understand what you do. Again, no huge downloads, because if I'm waiting for that reel to download and play, I've moved on to my next task, and that can move into the back burner. Make sure it's really clear as to what your contributions were and what you want to do. Include the bio page, which again kind of echoes like your cover letter, echoes your summary on LinkedIn, but tell me about you. And it's great. Like, you can have a sense of humor, you can be yourself, but I do spend time on that. I do read them. Again, include links to include your resume, download, LinkedIn, Instagram. You can showcase different reels if needed, okay? Sometimes you might have a lot of different work and you don't want to put it into a huge 3-minute reel. You can break it down. One that's a little bit more of generalist, one that's specific, and let me figure out based on what my needs are, where I want to go. And then very easy for me to connect and contact you. And check the formatting. Make sure that when I open up your website on the iPhone or an iPad or wherever it may be, different media, it all works, okay? And again, the grandma test. Can grandma navigate and understand? And if so, success with your website. And then the interview, okay? So like, do your homework just as you've done for submitting for the job. By the time we bring you in for the interview, we know that you can probably do the job. This is when we want to get to know you. So be aware that we are watching before the interview. So if we invite you for an interview, if we communicate with you, be responsive, be reliable. These are all the messages that you're sending that speaks to us who you're going to be with the team, okay? So be mindful of that. Prepare, rehearse, research, and again, really practice the interview, practice with your friends, get comfortable talking about yourself, talking about your work. It's okay. We want to understand who you are. Run through the commute. If it's in person, I always say to be early is to be on time. To be on time is to be late. You do not want to be late. If you are late to an interview, we're already thinking, well, time management skills aren't great. And you're going to show up, you're going to be like, oh, like we want you to be your best self. So prepare, run through the commute, run through the time and pad it. If it's virtual, which a lot of people will do Zoom interviews, make sure that like your background's appropriate. You don't have anything distracting. You don't have a baby crying in the background and a dog barking. Make sure that all the equipment works, all of your connections work. Because again, you're sending messages and we're forming an impression before we even talk to you about your work. Review the job description, run through it, right? And be able to tell a story. How can you support it? And if you fall short in an area, you can say like, oh yeah, my nuke skills, I'm bringing those up to speed. I'm taking an extra class, or figuring out ways to like bridge those gaps. And we don't expect you to be perfect, but it's nice to show that you stay engaged and interested and you want to learn. Again, know the company before the interview. If you can figure out who you're going to be meeting with, and then research them, know who they are, right? What are they about? And find some commonality, like again, dating 101. Everybody's gonna be like, oh, they know, it's compliment them on, know what work they worked on, know the studio, know the projects, be educated on that. Because again, that's gonna speak miles to us in the interview stage. It's okay to be nervous. You can be yourself, be positive. Obviously, don't like trash talk your employer. Because then we're just going to think you're just going to trash talk us. Be mindful, be your best positive self, your professional self, because your reputation will always precede you. And, you want that to be your best self. Once you've lost your reputation, it's really hard to get it back. So people talk. This industry is like so tiny now, and the worlds collide like you'd never believe. So really, your reputation does precede you. Dress appropriately. We work in a super casual industry, which is awesome. Don't show up in a suit unless you're really like a suit person necessarily, but dress a shade nicer, like go out of your way just to put yourself together a little bit. And then most importantly, I'm telling you, I have clients where I've presented them 5 great candidates, and I'll say, which one do you like? And they'll say, give it 24 hours. And it will always go to the person that sends a thank you note, believe it or not. Close the loop. Close the loop. Send a thank you. Don't send a group. Send a thank you to each person that you met with. Send a thank you to the coordinator that helped to set up the interview. Send a thank you to, anybody that you met with. It goes a really long way. And these are little moments and little messages that we're receiving that really say to us like, oh, awesome. You're great to work with. And I know that sounds silly, but it makes a difference. So follow up. You can also send in some additional materials or ask any additional questions that you may have. But, if you realize through the interview that they wanted to see more organic models, you can include, oh, here I'm including a couple extra pieces based on our conversation today. Great. Close it, close it, close it. Close that gap. Again, you might not get the job, and that just means that sometimes it just, we can only pick one. That doesn't mean that we don't think, again, by the time you get the interview, we really know that you can do the work. It just comes down to timing and what's available. So, don't burn a bridge. You've already built a network, and you've already included all those people you met with in the interview. You've connected with them on LinkedIn. There are going to be people that are going to be watching your posts, all of those things. So stay in touch. Check back in at 6 months. Hey, we had a great interview. I just wanted to update you on my work. Look, this is your network. You're making an impact. And you'll stay at the forefront of their mind. So when a job opens up, they're like, oh, God, you remember that awesome animator that we couldn't hire? They just did some really incredible piece. They'll be a perfect fit for this project. It goes to you. We're not going to post that job. We're going to give it to you. An additional tips, be open to entry level opportunities. Like I said, one of the greatest animators that I know, he was the receptionist at PDI. He answered phones during the day, worked on his projects at night, he was very respectful of other people's time, but he had incredible animators available to him to look at his work. He started out as a PA, as a receptionist, answering phones, and as soon as a junior animator job opened up, guess what? It went to Mike. Mike is now, eons beyond that, but that's where it started. Pivot and think outside of the box. Again, like this industry has highs and lows. Think of other ways that your skill set can also apply, okay? Sometimes we do have slow periods, so think outside of the box. You have a great skill set that can apply to other industries, pharmaceutical, legal, direct to brand. There are other ways. So start to think, come up with a list of these are my star companies. These are other companies that I'm interested in. And here are some interesting outside of the box ones that I might want to tap into. And who knows, you might tap into them and all of a sudden be like, you know what? I kind of really like doing pharmaceutical work. It pays well. I go home at the end of the day. I'm happy. This is great. So you never know, but stay engaged, stay open, stay interested. I talk to people all the time who, have their staff job. They put their head down for 10 years. They come back up. They're like, what's been happening? You're like, a lot's been happening. You are not up to speed. So stay involved with groups, CIFA, SIGGRAPH, Women in Animation. There are ways that you can volunteer at conferences to make it affordable. Again, this is your network already. You are going to continue to grow with each other. So keeping in mind to be your best self, stay interested and inspired. At the end of the day, you are artists and there's a reason why you're doing this. And this is what, continue to do your own personal work. That's kind of, I'm going to wrap it up. Just remember that at the end of the day, we work in a really fun, creative environment, but, there's money on the line, there are projects on the line, there are deadlines. It's real stuff. So, your professional self always, first and foremost. You can still have fun, but remember that it's a job at the end of the day. And continue to learn. And I guess that's really, these are some resources which I can pass along to continue to do your research, forums, ways that you can get your work out there. The 11-Second Club is a great one. Get comfortable putting your work out there and being visible. And that's it. And hold your questions because we're going to do a little Q&A and then answer other questions. So thank you. That flew by a little too fast. Sorry. Thank you.
I have one kind of important question that I want to start off with. It's a heavy hitting, not kidding.
All right.
What does a junior level position look like these days?
That was a good question. I think it just really depends on the studio and where you're applying. Sometimes people, junior level, especially if you're at a smaller shop, you're going to be working on projects, you might get your hands really, really in there. I think it's sometimes larger shops are going to be a little bit more, pulled back. Again, I think it just depends on the studio and where you're applying to.
Well, let's say, as an example, if you were an entry-level character animator.
Yeah.
What might be the expectation?
Definitely you're going to be working, you won't have hero shots. You're not going to be working on hero characters. You'll be working on smaller characters, background characters, things like that. But again, like I kind of echoed with any job that you're doing, as much as you're I don't want to do of course you want the glamorous piece, but we're watching your work. It's making an impression. So really do your best version of every job that you have.
That's great. Are there any areas that are kind of in a growth mode right now, like roles or positions?
I will say, never chase the job. Really important. Like, do what makes you tick, do what you enjoy, and the rest is going to follow. Because the reality is, you're doing this job 50 hours, 60 hours a week, whatever it may be, and you want to enjoy what you're doing. So just because, and I see there's always a flavor of the day. There's the character, there's not enough character animators, or compositing, nuke, there's not enough nuke artists. But don't chase that, because these things, they ebb and flow just like the industry. So sometimes there's a need and sometimes it's stripped back. So I wouldn't chase the job. Just do what you enjoy, do what you're good at, and I promise the rest will follow. So
that's great.
Yeah, stay focused.
I mean, you provided so much great information already. One thing that I found interesting when we were hiring is how if there was someone who was interested in our studio, that they would try to create work like our studio.
Yeah.
And to just echo something you had said, I think it's really important for people to lean into like just their own personal work.
Yes.
If you want to talk about that.
Yeah. Actually, I knew the recruiter from The Simpsons, and he always said, like, whatever you do, if you're applying for The Simpsons, don't do The Simpsons, because you're never going to do it as well as the people that do The Simpsons. So, know who you're applying to, know how your work is complementary, but don't try to do exactly what they do, because it's only going to fall short in their eyes. But know how you potentially fit in, right? I mean, if you're applying to a studio where it's like really cartoony work or really stylized work, then have something that supports that versus something that's more like photo real and live action and compositing oriented. So that's again where you do your homework and you can customize a little bit, knowing who you're submitting to. And again, you might not be a fit for all of the different studios. It's not a blanket that fits all. So figure out what your strength is, the places that really speak to you, and how you potentially fit in, and build accordingly. So
in assembling a reel, this idea that we've been trying to hammer here internally, but it's that you're echoing again, is that short and sweet is really important.
Yeah.
But we talked about this just briefly yesterday. How should they construct that? Like what is there? You tell us. Like
yeah, and again, I apologize. Like, it flew by so fast, that presentation. But, the reel, like, you got to set your viewer up. And I don't, before I even log into your reel, like, you have a slate that says character animator or modeling texturing with your contact information. So then before I even settle into your reel, I'm like, oh, okay, now I know what I'm going to focus in on. Okay. Like, I know that sounds, but I get reels sometimes where I finish and I'm like, what'd they do? I don't understand. So it seems obvious, but set your viewer up. And there's no formula, but really, again, I like to see the process. I want to see some before and after. Credits are very important too. I really want to know exactly what you did. If you did everything, then even break it down. Like, tell me what that means, everything, okay? And be specific. If you didn't do the design of the character and you just did the modeling of the character, I mean, give somebody else, just be clear, because we don't want to bring you in because we love that character design. You're like, oh, I didn't do the character design. And we're like, oh. So be honest about what your skill set is. Be super clear as to what your contributions were. If you animated just that background character, tell us it was just the background character, because that can be a really awkward moment in an interview, which we've had before. So,
but I think that leans into this idea of authenticity.
Yeah.
If depending on the role that you've got, you mentioned, like, if someone does have multiple interests, doing separate reels, I think that's really valuable. It's far better if you like camera and lighting, have your camera and lighting reel. If you have your character reel.
Right.
The one thing that we talked about yesterday is not padding your reel. Don't feel like you have to fill 60 seconds.
Yeah.
Right. So, keeping that focused. But what are some suggestions to someone? Again, we do have a lot of character animators here today, right? So this is one example, showing a quadruped, showing simple things. If you can do that with a story behind it too, even better. But
yeah, it's great. I mean, to be honest with you, I know you all work on your theses. But when you put your reel together, pull out just a few key shots and put that into your demo reel, and then you can include your full thesis separately, because that way you can really take a few key shots and really polish those and make those great for your reel, because I know it's like an overwhelming time and it's not going to be perfectly polished, but pull out those key pieces that really illustrate what your focus is and what your strength is, and then I can look at the full piece at the end. And I know like you get emotionally attached to work, but I'm not there to know the sob story. I'm not there to know like the tears and struggle that went into it. I just want to see your work and your good work. So, show it to your friends, show it to people. If it doesn't sell you, take it off. And if it's not something that you want to do, then take it off. And yeah, I mean, I think that's something else I was going to say, but no, it disappeared from my brain. But
I think that's all. I wanted to just touch on it with you again.
Yeah.
But if we have an opportunity to turn over the Q&A now from the audience, that'd be great. If
anybody?
I see an arm right here. But we've got mics coming, maybe? Okay.
Awesome.
Oh. Please go to the microphone to my left. Not the one to my right, because there is none, but to my left.
Oh, and also with your demo reel, like I'm not hiring you for the sound. I'm not hiring you unless that's what you're doing. But a lot of times, to be fully transparent, unless it's like lip sync or something, I'll turn down the volume. So don't get caught up in like making sure that the music is perfectly paced. Really focus on the work and the work itself and what you want to do. And the rest can kind of, take background to that.
Right, and I can see you in two screens, Kai. This is
Sweet.
Oh, hi.
So, first of all, thank you so much for coming in and talking with us
Thank you
again.
Thank you for coming.
I had a question about your process of moving into what would be like your own independent studio, or not studio, company. That idea, frankly, like it's something I've thought about a lot as a freelance worker, as someone going into the arts, of like, that feels overwhelming. Not the applying to companies, but the trying to create something of your own. That seems impossible to me. What was it like for you? How did you make the decision to do that? And how did how did you actually get that done?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think it was some degree of looking at the writing on the wall. Like I was like, like the industry's shifting, it's changing. Like I really noticed like, Disney was having layoffs, like places that you were like, they would never have layoffs, and just really sort of trying to reconfigure what was happening. And again, I was kind of trying to read the room of like the smaller shops were opening up and they don't have recruiting teams. So it was a little bit of that and some necessity. And then for me, I know it can be really overwhelming, but it was like bit by bit, like through my network, talking to people, I was able to like land a few people that were like, yeah, I'll throw you, let's see how this goes. So that started. And then for me, like opening up my laptop, like being like, okay, I'm open for business, and starting small. Like I was like, if I can make X, and because we all want to feed ourselves, like I was like, I'm going to give it 6 months. And if I can hit this mark financial, like small amount, but like if I knew that I could hit that mark, I was like, I'm going to keep going. And then if I can hit this mark, I'm going to keep going. And then it just started to kind of take shape. And, I mean, I marvel at just even meeting, the faculty last, like it's a small industry and we all know each other. And really it is a thing. Your reputation does precede you though. So remember, like, I ask about people before I hire them. I ask other people, like, what do they have to say? So it makes it, you have a reputation, and it's important too to keep that up. But I also love what I do. I mean, we all love hopefully what we do, but half of it doesn't even feel like work. So, but that's how it started. But start small, hit that nugget, and if that goes well, then just keep plugging away.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
Hi.
thank you so much for a lot of the information you presented so far today. Now, I do remember like a couple weeks ago, I was actually at a different person's industry presentation, and they were kind of talking about what networking and talking with connections and stuff. And when it comes to like getting a job, there's of course the more traditional way to apply, which is like through a portal online.
Yeah.
But then I was also told that there's also like, talking with people at the companies and whatnot.
Totally.
And it sounds like that's kind of considered when you recruit animators. Though I do remember at that other presentation, they said that do not bring up the question of request of, oh, I want a job. So
Right.
what do you recommend we talk about?
That's where I think like networking and just kind of making it like second nature, and making, you don't have to be like dazzling, but like just, it's easier to look for the job when you don't need the job. You know what I mean? Like it's just facilitating your network and connecting with people so that when the job does open up, you're sort of already like, you've already made that impression. So yes, you apply through the portal. Yes, you send it into like the HR or the recruiting team. But then there's, again, when a job opens up, it's always like, who do you know? Anybody know anybody? Who do you recommend? Oh, okay, let's open it up. Let's open it up. Let's open it up. That's where the jobs come in. So that's when you're visible, where somebody will say like, oh, if you start tinkering with Houdini and you post some work, all of a sudden they're like, oh my God, I saw somebody do some amazing work in Houdini recently. Just being visible. It's, we're out there watching, we're out there spending time on your work. So that, and again, just, staying on top of, reading what's happening, knowing like if you see an alumni have some success, just sending them a congratulations, like staying in touch with people is important. And that's kind of where those connections are made. Does that help?
Okay, so like maybe when you're like talking with somebody at a different company, when you're not necessarily needed for that company, or you don't necessarily need to work with them at that specific moment, when you're just casually getting
just it's part about just being visible and being part of the community. And that's where, versus like putting your head down, ignoring everybody, and then coming up and being like, all right, who's got a job for me? I need a job. Like, you know what? Like that's just taking versus just kind of, oiling the.
So like a give and take.
Yeah, for sure. And don't forget, pay it forward. When the time comes and somebody from DePaul reaches out to you and they're kind of wanting you to give them feedback on their portfolio or seeking out a mentor, hey, it goes both ways. Somebody that's a PA tomorrow can be your creative director the next day. So you never know. It really just be your best version of yourself and connect and talk to people.
Thank you. I think that was.
I just want to add one thing to this. Ila had mentioned this before, this idea of of connecting via LinkedIn, and that most people are actually really cool, kind people.
Yeah.
As students, you have this really wonderful benefit. People like to help students. So this idea of even not saying I want a job, but I'm really interested in learning more about your job. It's something I'm interested in. Gives them something to respond to, and it gives them something to be able to connect to you on, because people do want to help students.
Yeah. Dating 101, show interest in that person and what they do. And again, seek out mentors, seek out people like alumni, follow people on Instagram whose work inspires you, and stay engaged. It makes a difference.
Thank you. That's very valuable.
Oh, good.
And I think that actually was our last question.
Oh, great.
So, thank you, Ila.
Thank you. Thanks for coming today, people.